So classification of ovines, categories and cuts of meat. That's what this chapter, this video shall deal. Ovine, according to dictionary.com, ovine means it is pertaining to the nature of sheep. So that's what we're talking about. Now, to start with, we have a major terminology difference that is accepted and understood worldwide versus what is understood in India. Typically, when in India we talk about mutton, we are talking about goat meat. In Hindi we call it patha or khasi. That's what we call. But uh, worldwide, worldwide the terms are different, and we require to understand that very clearly. So we will first understand the term lamb, hogget and mutton. All three are very important terms. The mutton over here, let me tell you, it is not what we understand as mutton. What it is, we'll come to it. So here, that's a sheep over here. Yeah, we have a sheep over here, and sheep meat is called lamb, hogget or mutton depending upon certain criteria. Now what that criteria is, if it is the first year it is called a lamb, and if it's in the second year it's called a hogget, and older sheep meat is called mutton. Are you fine with this? So mutton is typically to do with older sheep meat. So if it is 2 years or below 2 years old, it's called a hogget, and below 1 year old it is called a lamb, right? Unlike our conception where mutton means the meat of goat, it is not so worldwide. Goat meat is just goat meat. It is not called mutton. Worldwide, or rather other than some Asian countries over here where mutton does meet goat, but worldwide if you were to go to Europe or Australia or the United States, mutton means sheep meat. Mutton and lamb, both of it means sheep meat. So does hog. Lamb classification. So you have milk-fed lamb, which is basically a lamb which is still, drinking its mother's milk. Typically, it is an unweaned lamb, which means it is still being having its mother's milk between 4 to 6 weeks old. That's what, and 5.5 to 8 kg. So worldwide, that is the kind of standard. Over here, we might have a small little adult one, which is around that weight. But here we are talking about milk-fed lamb, which comes about 5.5 to 8 kgs. And then you have young lamb, which is between 6 and 8 weeks old, and spring lamb, which is between 3 to 4 weeks old. Other classifications are also there. For example, sucker lambs, which is used in Australia, and a yearling lamb. So between 12 to 24 months old, which is actually another term for hogget, right? We had learned that below 2 years old, it's called a hogget, but in some places they are also called yearling lambs. Salt bush mutton is a term used in Australia for the meat of mature merinos which have been allowed to graze on a certain diet of atriplex plant. Other classifications. So you have something called salt marsh lamb, which is by its French name also called agneau de pré salé. Is the meat of sheep which graze on salt marsh in coastal estuaries that are washed by the tides and support a range of salt tolerant grasses and herbs. So essentially they also have they grow in places where there are certain kind of plants that grow along the coastal areas. So that is the what are the sparta grass, sorrel, sea lavender, etc. That is the diet of this salt marsh lamb. And salt grass lamb is also there, which is a type of mixture exclusive to Flinders Island, which is in Tasmania. Tasmania, as you know, is a part of Australia. It is a small little island which is off the main continent of Tasmania. That's called salt grass lamb. Again, the island over here, they have a relatively high salt content, which gives it a fairly different texture, similar to the salt marsh lamb which we just studied about. And goat meat. Goat meat is goat meat. It is not the same as mutton. Goat meat is the meat of domestic goats. So what we call patha or khasi would worldwide be called goat meat. The common name for goat meat is simply goat. So meat from adult goat is typically referred to as chevron or cabrito, while from young goats it's called capreto or natale or kid. So chevron and kid is something which you can remember. Chevron and kid. In South Asian and Caribbean cuisine, mutton commonly means goat meat. So here, that's what here when we talk about South Asian, maybe we are a part of it. So that's how we also called mutton the same as goat meat. Right. Okay. So other relevant terms in South Asian Caribbean cuisine, mutton also means goat meat. Various times and places, mutton or goat meat has occasionally been used to mean goat meat. Lamb meat is the most expensive of three types of the three types. And what are the three types we're talking about? We're talking about lamb, hogget, and mutton. Between all of this, lamb is the most expensive. So lamb meat primal cuts. Now we are coming to the cuts of meat. So here we have the different parts of it. The top end, this is the top over here is the neck, and then you have the shoulder, you have the shank, yeah, and underneath this part, this is the breast over here. You have got the hotel rack, the loin, and the leg. That's what we have over here. Yeah. This part, which is behind the loin and in front of the leg, it's called the sirloin. Lamb meat primal cuts. So this is with the bone. So to understand the structure with the bone on, this is what the cuts are like. Now important things to note over here. Terminology does not change. It all remains the same. You have the neck, the shoulder, the rib, which is called hotel rack earlier, and the breast over here, which is also called the plate, and you have the foreshank and the flank over here, the hind shank over here, leg over here. So the important point to note over here is between the fifth and the sixth rib, the cut happens. You see, this is the fifth rib, this is the sixth rib. Between this, a cut happens, and between the 12th and the 13th, and that we'll see afterwards. This is the same for beef also. So fifth and sixth, between this, a cut, and between 12th and 13th. So lamb primal meat cuts. The cuts that we just talked about, those are the primal meat cuts. First you have a carcass which is divided into two, which is two halves, and then after that it is divided into primal meat cuts. All that you have, the shank, the loin, the flank, and so on. All of these are primal meat cuts. So here we have different specifications given over here. What it could be. These are good to know. You don't require to by heart this. You can pause the video and just go through it a bit over here. Sub-primal cuts. Sub-primal cuts is below primal cuts. Now you have primal cuts, and then after that, when you cut it further, you could have a lamb foreshank, you could have a lamb boneless shoulder rolled and tied, a lamb whole leg, and a lamb shoulder which has been cut into a square. Lamb meat sub-primal cuts, some more lamb, the loin part which has been cut for the roast, and this is a lamb arm chop, which is essentially from the shank. A slice has been removed. A lamb shoulder or blade chop, which is pretty evident what it is. Lamb rib chop, lamb loin chop. Yeah, these what are called chops over here. These are the term. These you have the similar versions of it as steaks in the carcass of beef. When we talk about beef, we'll be talking about those. All these you have similar cuts, and they are called steaks when it comes to beef. Yeah, so here you have a typical roast lamb which has been cut and then sliced. This is typically the leg of a lamb which has been roasted. Yeah, that's a sirloin steak, which is a saddle, basically the saddle which is cut into a slice. They are typically about half an inch thick, and then this is ready for grilling. That's what steaks normally are. That's a lamb loin chop that was shown earlier in one of the earlier slides that was shown. And this is a lamb chop over here, very prized meat cut. So when the lamb chop, these are all cut and separated out, but when the lamb chop is not cut into pieces like this. It is also termed as rack of lamb. Uh, so the rack of lamb is basically the uncut chops, the the a part of the rib cage wherein you have the chops which have not been removed separately. They are called the rack of lamb. So here you have some Indian preparations here. Mogan Josh. Just just a little extension about the rack of lamb. You have something also called the crown of lamb, or a crown of beef also for that matter. So when you take a rack and when you uh, turn it so that both the ends meet, then it has got a circular appearance and it's also called the crown of lamb. That would be it. Thank you so much.